Rush Limbaugh decided to lecture the Pope on the virtues of laissez-faire capitalism. Let's watch.
You heard about the Pope? This is Pope Francis is in Bolivia, and he's come out with another one of his anti-capitalism remarks. He said, did you hear this, Dawn? Okay, well then you better be. The Pope, Il Papa, the Vicar of Christ, said that unfettered capitalism is the devil's dung. Now, in the first place, would somebody find for me anywhere on this planet where there is at this very moment unfettered capitalism taking place? You can't, because there isn't. And I would go so far as to say that the United States doesn't even have half-baked capitalism going on right now. But unfettered? What is unfettered? Have you ever heard of unfettered socialism? Have you ever heard of unfettered communism? You ever heard of unfettered Marxism? What is this unfettered capitalism? It's just more bastardization of language to denigrate the greatest economic system yet devised that creates prosperity for the most and opportunity for everybody. And because it does that, it must be reviled, it must be impugned, it must be destroyed. So you put the word unfettered in front of it. And what that means is unregulated, because, capitalism is so unfair. Capitalism is so unfair that it has to be regulated in order to make sure the rich just don't steal and take everything. Well, there isn't any unfettered capitalism, and there hasn't been any unfettered capitalism in I don't know how long, if ever.
That's not true. We do have a few examples of pure capitalism being implemented, laissez-faire capitalism, unfettered capitalism, whatever you want to call it. Iraq, for example. Iraq, famously, after the war, the Bush administration basically implemented a flat tax, deregulation, had very few regulations on the economy, and we know how that worked out. By the way, another perfect example of ultra-right-wing economics or laissez-faire capitalism, Somalia. Now, I know right-wingers hate it when you point that out, but there's a reason why we point that out. It's true. You want to know why? Because in Somalia, they have no centralized government. Not only do they have no centralized government, they have a lot of guns, too. Right-wingers utopia, right? Everybody should have a gun, right to bear arms, and the government's too big. Okay, well, Somalia is a good example of that. By the way, another clear example of unfettered capitalism, the Industrial Revolution in the U.S. And what happened during the Industrial Revolution? A Gilded Age, more or less. You had 1% of the population, or 0.01% of the population, basically take all the money and give everybody else the crumbs. I mean, we've seen this happen throughout history. We've seen it time and time again. This was the era of the robber barons, as they were called. People living in tenement houses, one-bedroom apartments, like 10 people, 20 people in a tiny little apartment, going to work at the factory, dying young, getting black lung and dying at the age of 36 because there's no regulation of the marketplace, no child labor laws, none of that stuff. You're basically renting yourself and your body and your labor on the marketplace to get a wage which barely allows you to survive, if it does at all. And that's pure capitalism, and what do they say? Rush looks at that and goes, yes. Best system. The best system to increase quality of life and provides opportunity for everybody. Let me ask you a question. Here he is ranting and raving about capitalism and how great he is. Well, do you think Jesus Christ would be in favor of capitalism? Remember, Rush is a Christian. He talks about it all the time. All right, so you're a Christian. Do you think Jesus is a capitalist? And I like how he says that, well, that's why the Pope is against capitalism, because it provides opportunity and a higher standard of living for everybody. Yeah, that's right. That's why the Pope is against an unfettered version of capitalism, because it's so great. And he wants to make sure to be against things that would raise people out of poverty, even though he spent his entire life fighting to try to get people out of poverty.